Chukdring Guejre Dilak Dijanai Dihadin Dikenchit Tronats Chukdrin Morris Thompson Chatit Dija Bertina Titus Nihlitz Agarechia Dikenchik Nasasakura Kenchit Garechia Kenchit Heitnithan Masi. So, good afternoon. We're here at the Morris Thompson Center with our friend Bertina Titus from Minto, and she'll be sharing some of her stories and experiences in language learning and her connection to the culture. And we're just very grateful that she's able to join us here today. So, welcome. Would you like to share your introduction? I heard you practicing a little earlier. In the Benhti Kenaga language.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say Basi. It's an honor to be here. This is something I don't take, it's, lightly. It's just an honor to be here with you guys and to share. Doyon, Saujra, Bertina Titus. My grandparents are the late Neil and Geraldine Charlie of Minto. My mom is Carol Reed. My dad is the late Carl Ramey, and originally from Minto. I've lived in Minto pretty much my whole life growing up, and Fairbanks, and now I'm in Wasilla. Been there for about 6-7 years, and been in Minto all summer though, so that's been exciting, working on a house down there and just love where I come from, and the ability to be around everyone there and to help out or just be amongst our people it's like healing, and it's awesome. It's pretty awesome. The thing that I wanted to share a little bit was how I kind of got started in this, just growing up, being around the language. You learn words like diget, keep still, or go away, dadi dana, different words, or ani, come here. And you just know those basic words. And that's kind of where I've been for a long time. And then an opportunity came, and I took that as a door opening, because I remember when my grandpa was passing away, he was very adamant on us learning our language, and that being a part of who we are. I really began to recognize that. And growing up, you don't really think about it, or you go off into the world or just don't realize it. But I know now what my grandpa was talking about as that, I believe, being a part of our identity. And so when he was passing away, I told him, "It's okay, Grandpa, you can go." I said, "I'll pick it up. I'll pick up our language." And with that, I know he passed away in peace, and knowing that someone was going to do it, not just me, but there's others, my cousins. David Ingalls, for one, is the fluent speaker now within our community. I don't think there's really anyone else that really fluently speaks it. We have one elder left, Grandma Josephine. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of hard to swallow, but we can't stop. We can't stop in what we're doing. And I just really, praise the Lord for that, because he gives us strength and wisdom and knowledge to pick it up and do what we need to do.
I remember your grandparents, Neil and Geraldine, and I think maybe the last time I saw them was we were at a camp out at Chena Hot Springs Road, like Twin Bears.
Oh, yeah.
That lake there, and just how kind they were, and they and the other elders from Minto. Oftentimes, I grew up here in Fairbanks in the village, and when we're here in Fairbanks, it's almost like the elders from Minto were our surrogate elders. They were always seen around town and at Festival of Native Arts, or just you could just feel the love that they had for the young people and the care they gave, not just to their own children and grandchildren, but to all of the community. And I just really appreciate having that growing up. So you said you were raised a lot by your grandparents.
Yeah. Lived with them pretty much my whole life. My aunties kind of helped a little bit, and my mom was always there too, but I just kind of my grandma took me in like one of her own, and that's what they've done, with a lot of the grandkids. We grew up like really close, and we lived in the little house that we're renovated right now. We just renovated that old house. The Minto Village Council gave it back to us, and that was like a God thing too. So renovating that and all the memories coming back of living there, growing up in the village and running to school in the morning, late, just get up and grab a pile of bread and stick it in your pocket and run to school because, you're behind schedule. But it was always awesome to go with them to fish camp and just live out there too, like I said, they didn't always speak. I didn't catch on to the language right away. And even now, I'm not a fluent speaker. I'm still a learner. But I noticed that it's coming a little bit easier. I've been trying to do it for, I want to say, ever since we got into the program with Doyon, when I was asked to get on board with that. I just thought that was the Lord opening the door there, so I took it, and that was a real adventure, jumping on board and doing the videos, because I didn't quite know what I was doing because I just knew a few words. But as we went along, and Vera and David and Grandma Sarah, and Vernell and Chad, they were all there and off and on, but that was a really eye-opening experience. And from there, the class I went to up at the university, that was another, I felt like a hard pill to swallow because to learn the language, it would be really good if you learn how to spell it and to say out the syllables correctly, the glottals and all of the GHs and the KHs and stuff like that, which you don't normally do in English. So it was quite a bit of learning, and I'm still learning. I mean, I can't even express how much I keep saying I'm still learning. But it was all a good thing to know, because you get that foundation, I was trying to write the language in the way I just would hear it. And they told me, no, don't do that because you're going to mix yourself up in how the dictionaries are. So I stopped, and I tried to just do it the correct way.
I think I've heard that listening, we know that when we speak, we involve muscles, right? Our tongue and the throat and the glottals.
Yeah.
Those are all our muscles. But it's also listening involves muscles. We don't think of that, but and just being able to listen and to hear the sound in order to be able to speak it. And so I think that that's really interesting, that I learned as I was trying to teach the language and all the challenges that are involved there. I was also raised partly by my grandmother, and I saw this funny kind of meme on Facebook. The question was like, what's it like being Indigenous? And then the answer was, did you ever get left with your grandparents for a very long time? So yeah, I think having them and having those grandparents in your life is really it's such a foundation. They share so much love and knowledge and understanding and compassion with you, and it's different than your parents, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's an experience that maybe a lot of kids don't get to have, but you someday will be a grandparent, so that's something to consider, and just knowing how to love them well, I think matters a lot. So
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I was hearing Vera talking about this sound she heard, and it was usually from the grandparents. Like, I think it was just like E, just a simple one syllable, and it meant "I love you." It meant so much, It was like just this one syllable sound
Ich.
coming from your grandparents or elders,
Yeah.
and they would say that as they hug you, and
Yeah.
it just, for her, that was something that just really stood out from her memories growing up in the village and with the elders and the language. Are there things that stick out for you as you've been starting to learn the language, and certain expressions or concepts that just kind of...
Well, I want to try to, I recognize teaching my kids the little things like I did. And they slowly catch on. They have more questions, which is really good. But I felt like from the learning standpoint, it has to start early when they're little, because right now as an adult, there's a struggle. I still believe too that there needs to be some healing that needs to come forth, deep healing from the past generations that went through the boarding schools and stuff like that. But the way I look at it is if that healing comes forth, then there will be ways that we'll be able to pick it up better. And as little kids learn, I think that'll help a lot. And the things that stick out the most too is just teaching a little bit and how it's got to be repetitive. I mean, like I said, we learned digat, get away, dadi dana, just those things, and they'll pick it up. Ani, I was trying to teach this young boy. He was walking by at potlatch time, and I tried to tell him, "Tsai in that, I want tea." And then I told him to ask me the question, "Tsai addy," and that's "you want tea?" And then I said, "Tsai at." And when I did that with him, that was like so awesome because I was able to share that. And I still want to see that young boy to see if he still remember, even it was just a moment. But that was something that I picked up in the Doyon when we did that language thing. That was one of the sessions and I remembered it. And just being repetitive in those little things, it mounts up to something more and it'll grow. I think about how David did it when he sat with the elders that summer. He got it and
Yeah.
he's still learning too. But now he has a degree and he's, he could be a teacher in doing that. So I think being repetitive and how you hear things over and over will be monumental later on.
Yeah, it is true that children are like sponges. They just absorb and seem to learn things quicker than us adults, But I think it is still possible for adults, to be patient with themselves and to forgive themselves if they mess up or say it wrong, or it's kind of similar to when you have a child and they're saying something like, "I goed to the store." You don't say, "No, that's wrong." You just say, "Oh, you went to the store." Just like gently model the correct way to say it, but not just shut them down by saying, "No, that's wrong." And it's similar, I think, for adults. We have to have that encouragement, and instead of just hearing, "Oh, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong," over and over,
Exactly.
but just having encouragement to continue learning. And we all make mistakes when we're learning, and if you put the glottal in the wrong spot, sometimes that changes everything you're saying. So it can be kind of funny as well as it's a learning process. We all go through that, I think, when we're trying to learn a language. And the good thing, I think, is that there's all the support that we have for one another. And I think working with that Doyon Languages Online, there were 5 languages involved at one point, and we were wondering how that might go, but it wasn't a competition. There were each of the language groups, the teams were supporting one another, and we were all trying to reach the same goal. So I thought that was, in one group would inspire the other group. And so I really enjoyed seeing that happen. When we started the project, people were wondering, is that really a good idea to do 5 languages at once? But I'm just happy with how things turned out, and meeting new people and working closer with others. I just really enjoyed that process myself too.
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, the way that all came together, I really enjoyed that too. Being around the people from Venati, and then when I always would miss when Tana Cross was there too, because we're related up that way, you know.
Yeah.
So I wanted to try to just listen in, and I love to hear Rose speak when she speaks.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was really, I thought, amazing was that big conference they had up at the university.
Oh, yeah.
When they had all the languages. I mean, there was so many different people. The Hawaiians came, they did a presentation, and that too was very interesting in how it all comes together and all of the different parts. I thought what really stuck out there was the immersion school. And that's something I would hope to do someday, when I get a little bit better maybe, or even try to get into it now to where it will help and get that stability a little bit better too. So that
So
was
you
pretty
said
great.
that you were also trying it out in your own home with your children, or inviting people to come and just speak the language.
I wanted to.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to try to do the immersion in my home one time. I thought of labeling everything that I knew, or, from the dictionary really, because I don't know too much yet, like I said. But I wanted to just label everything and have people come over and say, okay, once you come in the door, you can only speak our language,
Mm-hmm.
And that hasn't happened yet, but it's a dream that I would love to fulfill someday.
Yeah.
And it's just immersion in your own home for even just a day or a weekend or something.
Yeah. I think little by little, baby steps.
Yes.
Sometimes it takes time and, repetition and sustained effort over a longer period. But yeah, I think the thing I appreciate also is that, when we hear the word fluent, of course, we think of our elders who grew up speaking the language and understand and can tell stories and sing songs, do all these things in the language. And sometimes we think that's the goalpost, right? We want to get there, but we can call ourselves fluent. Say, just with your introduction that you did earlier, you understand it. You know what you're saying. You're able to produce it. You can call yourself fluent just with that introduction, or just with whatever it is you're learning.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you can call yourself fluent in that respect, as far as your learning process. You spent your time, you've learned it, you understand it. So I think, it's what is the word? It's fluent, but there's also, I'm spacing on it, but it's just having the facility and the ability to express in the language. I think that's something to be celebrated and shouldn't be downplayed. It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a learning process, and that's what I really enjoy. Right now, I'm just trying to listen to recordings. I really enjoyed the recording that Ellen Frank did. That's what I kind of really started with. And then now I listen to recordings by Grandma Sarah and Auntie Jenny Baker and Susan Pascavan. I just listened to over and over and over lesson 1. And I was doing something the other day, and I remembered a word that she said, and it was Seniltan and Senultan, 2 different, and it means he's looking at you, or you're looking at him, different. And I just really was blessed by that, because I remembered, and it was like a hard moment that I had to go through, but I heard it. And so I knew, I took it from that he's looking at me, and that's the Lord. He's looking at me. He helped me through that time. So just those moments of learning and hearing and remembering has really kind of helped me along too. And the other thing I was going to share too about was when I actually did have another conversation with Vera. She came in at potlatch time and we shared, how are you doing? Da'inta, Ishrun, I'm fine. Ninju, how about you? She said. I said, Sukchuku, Ishrun. And that just really was monumental because it was an actual conversation that we shared. And I haven't done that with anyone.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
You mentioned kind of the spiritual aspect too there with you felt like it was something that was feeding your spirit, this connection with the language and your creator and the Lord. And earlier you mentioned healing. I think, would you feel okay describing some of that?
Well, yeah, what I felt like too was my grandparents, they love the Lord. That was part of their ministry and going around and just loving people. There was talk about how my grandpa was one of the meanest men in the village, but when he gave his heart to Jesus, he changed. And he was humble, in that. And I felt too that as natives, we have that connection with the Lord because he created us to be who we are. And our language is actually a part of our identity. And people may not think about it or realize it, but I think now that looking back in what my grandpa meant about trying to learn our language, because that's an important key that helps us to be who we are and how God created us to be, because he wants us to be effective, in his kingdom, because he created us for something. So we need to search that out and find out what it is. And, since I gave my heart to the Lord, I've been through a lot of stuff, but I know he's helped me even to do this. I don't think I would be here if it wasn't for him. I have lots of testimonies there on, just doing things in the world and it affecting me. But I felt like this is a goal that I have to work towards even more, to really search out and find out what God has. Because the thing I want to stress too is we say our language, but we sing our songs, but do we know what we're saying? The elders did. That's, I felt also why they lived to be 80, 90 years old. I didn't see them drinking and partying. They let that go long ago, and they picked up what the Lord had for them in the Word of God, and they became stronger. And I think back too, we wouldn't be here if they didn't do what the Lord asked them to do too. There's just too much bad things that happen when people go the wrong direction. And I know our grandparents want us to stay in the right direction. I shared one time about what Grandpa said on not swallowing everything what everybody say because somebody got hurt or offended. He said to chew on some, a while and then spit out what you don't want. And while I was picking berries the other day, I thought, gee, that's like what they say, food for thought.
Oh, yeah.
It's like it came together, just thinking of it like that. But different things come back to me on what my grandma and them really installed into my heart. And so thankful and blessed that I was raised by them.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I just always admire that in you, how you express your spirit and your spirituality, and your feelings about things. And I think that reminds me of like Chief Peter John when he would talk about the traditional stories and the Bible stories. They're very similar. He was just noticing that they're there to teach us lessons and to connect us with the world and how to be in the world. And I thought, that's really, he was such an amazing intellect and had a lot of insight and an understanding of our traditional ways and living on the land and the language, but also, we're living in today, so things have changed some, but to always remember that those important lessons that they're there in the language. I think, as you're learning the language, you'll discover something and it builds up your understanding.
Yeah.
It's not just verbs and nouns and adjectives and all these grammatical things. It's also the culture and the ancestral knowledge there, and healing. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, that's why when they state about Chukwuetzin, love,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's one of it's the strongest word in our language, and Chukwuetzin is what really, I believe, God is love, and
Beautiful.
Chukwuetzin is love. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Lately, you've been doing some work in Minto with a couple
Oh.
of projects, or
Yes. So that one was interesting. We got the Doyon grant, and I'm going to be working with Charlie Jr. and Tom Huntington on how to build a sled and tan a moose hide. So that's in progress. We're going to try to hook up with the Yukon Kaikuk School District, I hope, and they're going to help with media, and we want to try to get it publicized for the schools
awesome.
and just for people to have, you know, to learn how to do these things.
So when you're tanning a moose hide, you're learning also the terminology, the phrases, or the vocabulary there. And
yeah, it's going to be as in depth as possible.
Yeah.
We're hoping it's just a matter of how we put it all together and how it's going to come out. I'm really hoping it's going to be something great because their names are going to be on it.
Yeah.
So
well, we look forward to it. I appreciate you stopping by. I know you're busy, and I appreciate your time today.
yeah.
Masicho.
Well, Basit, thank you for having me.
All right.
All right.
Take care.